Memorial Day. Let's talk about Memorial Day for a minute. So what's that all about? You notice over the years, like my family's a military family, okay? My father was in World War II, Korea, and volunteered and went to Vietnam. My brother's Vietnam veterans. My sister, Desert Storm, she's a medic. Me and another brother, peacetime. We were very fortunate. And every time on Memorial Day, a lot of, especially military kids, will post pictures of their parents, military parents. And often they get sort of chastised or just rebuffed just a little bit because the pictures that are posted are not military people that are actually killed in battle. And that's pretty much what Memorial Day is supposed to be about, the military people who made the ultimate sacrifice in wartime. Okay? But, from this perspective, listen, this is an urban program. What I want to share with you is that in this nation, black people are still at war. Black people came to this nation, they were captured, prisoners of war, forced hard labor. We look at the pictures in World War II of the prisoners of war in Europe by the Germans. And we look at but especially we look at the pictures of the Japanese prisoners of war, the American prisoners that the Japanese, captured. We look in the Philippines when the Japanese captured so many Americans and Philippines and had them that march to Bataan. Many of us know about that. And you're talking about Japanese with this Bushido mindset, and with the mindset that if you're a captured enemy, you're really shamed. You should have killed yourself, So the Japanese had this attitude of real disdain and disgust for the prisoners that they had captured during wartime. And you saw from the march to Bataan that so many died of starvation and disease and execution along the way. The Japanese were that ruthless. And it goes down into history. And anytime you bring up to World War II veterans about that march to Bataan and the Japanese, they're really emotional because they were prisoners of war. And so we have this agreement, the Geneva Convention, that when you take prisoners of war, there are certain human rights that are supposed to be afforded to those prisoners, which were not recognized by the Japanese. But what I want to suggest today is there is the Japanese treatment of POWs, American POWs during World War II is like a holiday compared to the treatment of Africans that were captured and brought to this nation and forced into servitude. Forced into servitude under more heinous conditions than that march to Bataan. More heinous conditions than the Japanese could have ever thought of to perpetrate upon their prisoners. Black folks have suffered in this nation from slavery and executions and tortures and generations of slavery and servitude and executions and tortures and rapes. Countless. To use a Bible quote, if you can number the stars in the sky, you can number the numbers of Africans and their descendants who were mistreated heinously at the hands of this nation, and still going on today. And so when you talk, so I just want to share with you that we are still at war. Black folks were captured, and so black folks were prisoners of war, POWs. And the generations and generations, you're talking about hundreds of years of that type treatment. And we're still at war. We're still, the war has been a bit sanitized, but we're still suffering from the hands of our captors. And so black folks in this nation have every right not only to post the pictures of their military relatives and ancestors that are no longer with us, but to post the pictures of every relative and ancestor that has died in this nation, as we are still at war, still under siege. So Memorial Day speaks to the loss of life for every black person in this nation, until the situation that we are seeing, that we are faced to observe and experience, has been totally eradicated. Okay? Was that a little much? It's our Memorial Day. More than anyone else's. And what I find very interesting is that we have fought in every war. As you begin to see pictures, if you begin to research now, you recognize the fighting units through World War II. We already know Iraq and Afghanistan and Vietnam and all, but World War II, they would have had you believe that black folks only served in menial positions. Now what this nation really... opportunity to die, they're not going to send black folks out front. A lot of black folks fought in World War II. A lot of black folks fought in World War I and died. A lot of black folks fought in the Spanish-American War and died. A lot of Buffalo Soldiers were totally aware of, fought during the Indian issues that our nation had. Always black folks fought in every conflict, in every war, believing that their freedom that their freedom would be earned, only to find out after the fact that it wasn't. And you know, I used to, as growing up as a military kid and all, I always liked the war movies. Iwo Jima, you know, I mean, all those movies. Only to realize later, consciously realize the black folks that were lacking in all those movies. Saving Private Ryan. Didn't see a black person at all in that. Maybe one. Oh, come on now. It wasn't like that. Now, we've heard of the Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen. Why? Because they couldn't keep it a secret. You know, as the Red Tails were flying during World War II, protecting those bombers, didn't lose one bomber, to where the bomber squadrons were even requesting, they were refusing to fly unless the Red Tails were escorting them. Well, guess what? Those bomber pilots, although they were insisting to be escorted by the Red Tails, they didn't know the Red Tails were black. It was the big secret. You know how they found out? There was a bomber that crashed somewhere around. They even had these Red Tails in Italy stationed on a remote location so white folks wouldn't find out they were black. But there was a bomber plane that went down. The crew survived, and they were rescued by these black folks in Italy. And when they were brought back to the base, they were amazed. And so an entire base of black folks, enlisted men, officers, these were the Tuskegee Airmen. This was the black squadron that was protecting all of those bomber pilots. Those white bomber pilots had no idea the Tuskegee Airmen, they had no idea the Red Tails were black. Because they couldn't keep it a secret now. These guys were rescued by them on the ground. And so what I'm suggesting today is the reason we've bought into the lie that black folks had only menial jobs in World War II was because it was a lie. It was a big secret, don't tell. And that lie has been perpetrated over all these years from World War II. And so I'm just suggesting that if your granddaddy or your daddy told you there weren't any black folks, they were ignorant. Simply because where they were, there may not have been. Man, I knew this guy, man. I was a mailman in West Dayton, and I ran into this real old guy, and we were talking, and he was telling me that he was in World War II. He had volunteered. I think he was like 18 years old. And he said, you know why? This is an old black man. He said, you know why when you see those black and white newsreels of World War II, you never see any black people? He said, you know why? I said, no, why? He said, because they refused to film us. He said, we'd be there right side by side, these white guys, and the camera crews would only film them. They wouldn't film us. And this man began weeping as he was telling me. I mean, it wasn't just a tear. This man was weeping while he was telling me about the offense that even the news media people perpetrated because they didn't want to give the folks back home who were still actively oppressing black people in America to see that black people were overseas fighting against a common enemy in the name of America. So what's interesting, I mean, there are pictures of black folks being lynched, still wearing their uniforms, coming back from fighting overseas for this nation. And we see today, even with the George Floyd, and that was just one isolated incident that happened to be caught extremely on video. This is what we have in this nation. We are still at war. We are still the descendants of POWs, therefore we are POWs because we are still at war. Some of us have been fortunate enough to find our way and make our way even in this mess. But you got to sleep with one eye open. You got to recognize anytime you get pulled over, it could go south. Situation hasn't really adjusted to the point of total equality. We're still at war. All of our ancestors that have died from the time they got here up until yesterday should be recognized on Memorial Day because we are still at war and we're fighting on the side of right and freedom. It's very important to realize that. You know what's really interesting is that stuff that we see going on right now, how they're trying to prosecute our former President Trump. Recently they've convened a grand jury or something to look at his criminal activities and, you know, all that stuff. And what's very interesting to me, and it's kind of funny a little bit, is that why do you think they're going through all this? Why do you think they're taking all this time and all this money to prosecute this man? Well, I mean, if he's a criminal and he should be prosecuted. But what I want to suggest is that these people that are pursuing these legal actions against Trump, for the most part, are just white folks that have been offended by Trump, by all the insurrection and all that stuff. These are white folks that are pursuing the legal course, you know, hiring these attorneys to investigate Trump and all that stuff. Because these white folks were offended by Trump, by all those people, by their antics, by their words, by their actions. And they're simply responding. What I want to suggest is the offense that these white folks feel that are moving them to pursue in such an enthusiastic manner are the offenses that black folks have been experiencing in this nation all along. That ain't nothing new to us. Welcome to our world. Welcome to the offenses that we've been experiencing. The negativities, the harshness, the unfair treatment, the ridicule that have been levied against black folks since our arrival in this nation, through slavery, after slavery, through Jim Crow, through the struggle for civil rights, and even recently, lamenting when a black person dies, how Black Lives Matter, only to be ridiculed and met with All Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter. Come on now, the offense that these white folks are feeling, we've been feeling all along. And for the other side, the feeling of undue persecution, dogged persecution, the feeling that we really don't deserve all this scrutiny. This is what we've been experiencing as well. So from both sides, what these white folks are experiencing and doing to each other, we've been experiencing in this nation all along as black folks. And so what I'm suggesting to black people is don't get caught up in their fray. This is their fight. Because the reality is, whether white folks are on the right or white folks are on the left, and don't get me wrong, some of my best friends are white folks. Believe me, they really are. I love saying that though. But I want to say white privilege has been real. And I don't necessarily believe white privilege has been a conscious effort. I believe that white folks simply feel more comfortable with white folks, like at times black folks feel more comfortable with black folks. So if a white man, police officer, person in authority stops a black man, he might have less empathy for that black man than he does if he stops this white man. And I'm not saying that he's consciously thinking this. There's just a natural, more comfort feeling when this individual that he stops looks like his nephew Jody or his uncle Bill or his aunt. There is a natural feeling of rest, of ease. But then when he stops this black guy, I mean, you got a whole bunch of other subconscious issues going on. There's some guilt in there that's unresolved, that's subconscious when this white authority figure stops this black man. There's also fear when this white authority figure stops this black man, because if he didn't have that gun, you know, there might be an issue that he wouldn't be able to resolve in his own benefit. And as well, that doesn't look like his Uncle Jody. That looks like the black guy that really embarrassed him when he was younger or beat him up when he was younger. So you got a lot of issues going on that are what is defined as white privilege. And that's why white folks reject the idea of white privilege, because in their minds they know, no, I don't feel this way about black people. I've never persecuted a black man without recognizing that it's not the conscious white privilege that is the issue, but it is a subconscious response which responds preferentially to white folks that isn't even being realized, okay? So I don't believe then that when this cop actually always takes out this black man, but takes the white guy to McDonald's, he might not be consciously making these decisions. So how do we combat the white privilege? You can't. You cannot combat. The only way, okay, let me put it another way. The only way to combat white privilege is to defeat white privilege. Or you defeat the conscious, you defeat what would be the conscious actions brought on by the subconscious white privilege. Case in point, Obama. Let me just make it easy. White privilege was that there was always going to be a white president of the United States. Didn't matter. And we all believed it. That's why we could joke about Bill Clinton being the first black president. You know, as pitiful as that is when you really think about it. And most black comedians, as you go back and listen to some old stand-up routines, like even Cat Williams or Dave Chappelle or Richard Pryor, some of these guys, no one ever believed that there would be a black president. White privilege. So when you as a black man buy into what would be the conscious results of a subconscious white privilege, you are actually enabling the white privilege by buying into it. And then when you begin to make fun and joke about it, you're solidifying that white privilege. So Obama came on the scene. And white privilege was all over the place. Even the Democrats, Hillary Clinton, come on, he's not electable. Wink, wink. What does that mean? Bill Clinton, back in my day, you'd be bringing me lemonade, So that's the white privilege. Okay? On the Democrat side, on the good white people's side. White privilege is just the thing. Obama defeated it. Hillary couldn't believe it. She wouldn't quit, remember? She couldn't believe she lost to this black man. She wasn't quitting, remember? I'm talking about the primary between Democrats. She wasn't going to quit. She couldn't believe it. Because her subconscious knew that she was going to defeat this black man. That was her white privilege. So how was white privilege defeated? Obama beat her. That's it. That's it. That's how you defeat white privilege. You have to be better. You have to beat them at every turn. That's how you defeat it. And so you're not going to defeat white privilege while you're drinking your Crown Royal. You're not going to defeat white privilege while you're getting your buzz. You're not going to defeat white privilege as you're outrunning the police and then get caught. You're not going to beat white privilege by committing crimes, by killing each other. You're never going to defeat white privilege. See, that's why white people can commit crimes. That's why white people can smoke weed. White people can drink alcohol, because there's already that white privilege. You don't have the same battle they have. You're trying to defeat white privilege, you see. And with all those vices, with all those hang-ups, you are enabling the white privilege to maintain. And really a disgrace to the ancestors, which were brought here in chains, suffered through slavery, suffered through Jim Crow, suffered the civil rights, sacrificing all they could so that we could be well. And we are not there. And we're committing crimes, doing drugs, doing alcohol, doing each other. We've enabled... See, white people... See, there is this thing called white privilege. But we saw firsthand how to defeat it when Obama defeated Hillary, Obama defeated Romney, Obama defeated McCain. On every turn, white privilege was defeated. You have to defeat it. White people don't have control over white privilege. Quit asking them to stop. Quit saying, look at that. See, that's white privilege. Look at that. Look at that. Who cares? The way to stop it is you. You are powerful. You're strong. Look at black people in this nation from its inception. Even right out of slavery, there were black millionaires. Go figure. Business people. We've blown businesses up. Look, military, officers, generals, the red tails. And so many others. Sports, music, executives in business, President of the United States, all other levels of government as well. We have that ability. We are great. We have the ability to win. Boxing, come on. Let's not go there. But so it's not just music, but physical, business, military, political. Every aspect of life, we have that strength to defeat white privilege. Quit asking them to. They don't even really consciously know it's there. So you're spending half your time trying to prove that there is white privilege. So most of the time, they don't even realize it's there. And when they do realize it's there, they're not going to admit it. So you're wasting your time. The only way to defeat white privilege is for you personally to be stronger and you dominate. You can't dominate with that buzz. You can't dominate from jail. You can't dominate with a record, police record. You can't dominate killing your brothers and sisters. You can't dominate with gang warfare and all the stuff, back and forth stuff between each other, black folks. You are giving them, you are feeding the power to white privilege. Black folks. White folks have no control over white privilege. Black folks do. For real. Does that make sense? I think it does. Come on, man. We are our own worst enemies. We are our own worst enemies. Even look back at the civil rights movement, man, and after that, we had the Black Panthers, and we had infiltrators, black folks. There have always been black folks sabotaging black folks. Okay. Then we have some of the big leaders. I don't want to name their names, but I mean, some of our big black leaders in the 70s took payoffs from companies to back off. Come on, they were like boycotting. So, some of our guys like Jesse Jackson and those guys in his era recognized how powerful black folks were when they could target a company and say, don't purchase anything from that company. They learned that from Martin Luther King's bus boycott. And you had companies paying off some of these black leaders not to target them. And they sold out our own people. white privilege, there is no power in white privilege when black folks get focused. I'm just letting you know that. And it's got to be our kids. Because and I was thinking the other day, how most of the major protests throughout history, like in our nation, black folks, have been the young. And you wonder why. I think with all this knowledge and experience that it would be the older black folks that would be spearheading these. But I think that we have grown sort of complacent. We have found a place, when we find a place of comfort financially, we do grow complacent. Like for instance, I was sitting with my daughter the other day. She's like 16 years old. And so Trading Places came on. That movie with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd and what's her face? Curtis, Jamie Lee Curtis and all. Real funny movie. So sometimes she'll humor me and sit with me and watch some of these old. She won't watch black and white movies, but she watched that, and she was doing something on her smartphone, but she was with Dad, spending time. We were watching Trading Places. And then Dan Aykroyd, if any of you recall, he steps on this train and he's acting like he's a Jamaican. So he's got blackface on and dreadlock wig on, and it was and it was funny from back in the day. Any of you guys that watched Trading Places back then? But I looked at my daughter and she got mad because this white man's in blackface. And then part of the show where, Eddie Murphy, the two old guys say, would you really let this N-word, run the company? And my daughter got angry again. And she was like not thrilled with Trading Places, which is a very funny movie. At that point I realized how generationally, what I would acquiesce to, the younger generation wasn't giving on. And she found that movie to be terrible and extremely offensive. And I think she was getting ready to make a TikTok video about Trading Places, which I was trying to turn her on to. And it is good to have young people in the house for old folks like me, because it kind of reminds us. It reminds us that the only power white privilege has is the power that we give it. How's that? Just think about that. Well, anyway, I do once again want to thank you for joining me and listening. And I want to invite you to listen again. You take care.